Manhood, brought to you in part by Reboot Sports Drink.
Welcome to another conversation on manhood, where we discuss topics that impact all men and, of course, women. So we always say that we are better as brothers, and we're not speaking on behalf of all men, we're speaking to all men. Today's topic is a big one, and I know, again, I always say it's a big one, but it is. It's big topics. It's big topics because it has big impact, and that's what's important. We're talking about choice is relative. So you have choice. People think from a certain position and where they're at in life at that moment, and that's their choice to make. So without further ado, let's get straight into it. Johanse Audike, behavior change consultant, always a pleasure. To his right, the man known as Christmas List, or Chris,
yes,
a journalist who's spent a lot of time in Trinidad and Tobago recently, documenting life in Trinidad and Tobago. And to his right, KG, a friend, an artist, a podcaster, a producer, so many titles here today. But real pleasure, guys. I know the busy schedule that you all have and the importance that you all place on manhood, because it's the message that we're trying to get out. Yeah. So choice is relative.
All right, well, we dive right in. I've noticed sometimes people often say, I have to do something. Or they would say something, I have no choice but to. Mm-hmm. But the truth is, we always have a choice. Even if there's a gun to your head, you still have a choice. And I'm putting it out there because knowing that you have a choice, and I will say this to the audience, knowing that you have a choice is coming from a place of empowerment. But from the time you say, I have no choice, or I have to do this, or I have to be this way, you're coming from a place of disempowerment. Tell me your thoughts.
Yeah, but the word relative is so important, right? The example that you provided, a gun to the head, doesn't have many options, right? But since we're talking about men growing up, even from birth in Trinidad, the options are relative to where they grew up.
Right.
Did they have a father involved?
Mm-hmm.
Who was the father? I'm finding a lot of generational issues in Trinidad, in particular with the boys. If your father was a gun toter, your options are not going to be the same as if you grew up in the mountains in a prestigious school in Trinidad.
Right.
So they are very relative. I think this is a great topic, and the title itself is perfect. When I create videos and I read the comments, I got to put myself into each commenter's mindset. If they see a gang member, a lot of them will say, well, he didn't have to do that. But my first question to them is like, where did you grow up? Maybe you don't have the ability to speak on behalf of somebody that didn't have the privilege that you had. After doing this for 3 years full time and meeting gang members around the world, there's common denominators. Most of them had a difficult childhood. Most of them were birthed and grew up in a neighborhood that didn't give them many options.
Right.
I still meet doctors that grew up in bad neighborhoods, so there are opportunities, but they're a lot lesser than somebody for myself, like an example that grew up in Toronto, where I've never gone one day without food. Never once was I ever concerned about crossing a certain walkway and being a target. Right? So my options are relative to my upbringing. So what I would say is, for those people that are watching this content or watching my content, you got to take yourself out of your current shoes and walk, like they say, walk a mile in a man's shoes to really understand that not everyone has the selection of options that myself I had. That's for sure.
And KG, you will have seen that also, as a Trinidad music producer as well.
Sure.
Some of the things that you've shared with me that was a real eye-opener is that people see it a lot of times as inciting violence and lyrics like that. But really and truly, the truth is they're just speaking about what they've encountered, the life that they're living.
Yeah, what they know. What a man know is what a man know. As Chris say, if you grew up in the mountains, you would live a life of a man in the mountains.
Right.
If you grow up in the streets where bare crime, bare corruption, most of the times that is what you would be experiencing, and that is what would reflect, through your life now. Yeah.
So when you're talking about choice, as we said, choice is relative. To someone who as you referred to, using the analogy here, living in the mountains, or living in a life that is that, where you can open your fridge and you can get something to eat.
Yeah.
You can go home and there's a certain level of safety that you feel, and safety not necessarily meaning that you're not afraid to get robbed or something. Safety
Correct.
meaning that you have a family unit around you, have a community,
Yeah.
right? You react and behave a certain way, and you can't fathom why something else is happening because you haven't walked a mile in their shoes. So people aren't inherently born bad or born evil, and this is in no way justifying what is occurring in our home of Trinidad and Tobago, and your adopted home, Chris. It is a product of the environment.
Yeah, I think that I mean to cut you, Robert, but I think that we underrate poverty a lot in this country now. It's so easy to say, I wouldn't have been like that if I was in that position. Like, I've been hearing people saying that, like, I could grow up in the ghetto and still come out to be something. Okay, that's all well and good. We are hearing you, but as Chris say, he never had to go a day without eating. Just think about how would you think if you had to think about food every single day of your life. Like, I just wake up in the morning and sometimes I have food there waiting for me. So I didn't have to study that. I could just put on my clothes and live my life. But it has some people, they can't even think about the next step, because the first step, which is nutrition, which is food, they don't even have that benefit.
And then we could go another step further, KG, where you may have food in your fridge because of the lifestyle that you chose, even in those environments. But if you choose to be in a different environment, your friend might be, looking at maybe a darker side of life. And if you decide to choose another side, are you going to be ostracized from your community, which is your safe space, which is your pack?
Correct.
They're friends after all. Or are you, in terms of trying to move outside of that, are you going to be accepted by community, by other communities?
Yeah.
So it's like you almost, I don't have a choice.
Correct.
In certain specific instances. And as I just want to quickly mention, people that, and I applaud what you're doing, Chris, because you're going in, you're showing the Trinidad and Tobago another view, a realistic viewpoint. But without calling any names, persons that go in there like a fad, like a fashion, and they say, hey, I could, as you just pointed out, I could go in the ghetto, I could go in these areas, and use it as some sort of, social media push. But the reality is, those persons can remove themselves from that environment and go back into a nice environment. They could eat food. They can be accepted in other areas. And therefore, they you want to see a burn inside of my face there.
I come into what KG was saying, people think a certain way, people have a certain mentality. What I realize is most of us, we weren't taught emotional intelligence. We were all taught academics in school. Right? And emotional intelligence is the ability to put yourself in somebody else's shoes. Now, not exact because you're not them, but to even see it from a different perspective. So most of us lack that. So I help and understand why people would even look at it in such an obtuse manner. Then secondly, is that the truth is knowledge is power. So even what you did, Chris, whether or not, because I know some people said you were doing it also for a publicity stunt. You were doing it for your own selfish reasons. And it's okay, even if you're doing it for selfish reasons, all of us do things for reasons that we want, which is fine. Right. But the fact is, knowledge is power. Some of those places that you went to, many people never even see. They live in right here in Trinidad and never even see it. And it was interesting because when you went to Belmont, I grew up in Belmont. So some of the places you went, I was playing as a child. So I was like, okay, I know this is real because I could see these things. And then some of the other comments that I read and even people spoke to, they grew up in St. Paul Street. They grew up in Tunapuna. I think even Tunapuna. They grew up in these areas, so they know it real. But for someone else, they didn't know. But the good thing is, many people, even though some people would say, well, if I grew up in a ghetto, I would never be like that. There were some people say, wow, I didn't know it was really like this. So Of course, you'll have the naysayers, but I'm glad because knowledge is knowledge. And once you have knowledge, you're able to make a better choice. Right. So even if it's choice of the person who's living in the situation or the choice of the person who's seen it from outside, they are now better informed whether to help or just to ostracize those guys.
Well,
Yeah. So I'm not, for me, if I have a moment, I could share a story that, as somebody that walks into different communities around the world, I've been to 128 countries now. I've learned to not bring in my own opinion all the time. I'm always an open book. I know I don't have the ability to go into somebody's shoes, but I try my best to picture if I was in that position.
Right.
And I couldn't guarantee I would have gone the right route. There's a pretty good chance that I would be doing the same thing they're doing, right? So I'd just like to share a quick story. I was in Haiti right before this current disaster that's happening. So let's say about 12 months ago. And during my time there, it was 8 days. There was 200 murders in the city. Okay, and there's one man that I met. I went into a neighborhood, and he called himself the inspector. I don't recall his real name, so the inspector is his name.
Right.
So calm with his tone, with his gestures, even like opening doors for me, like the most polite man in the world. But I know he's a guy that carries a gun, and I know he's used the gun before. But I try to let that all sit aside and just listen to his story.
Right.
And through a translator, he said, Chris, when I was 8 years old, I was at the church collecting donations. But that church right now is burnt to the ground. There's very little remnants of the columns of that church. So in between now at 28 and 8 years old, that 20 years has been a war, not unlike an Iraq or an Afghanistan war. And during that time, his brother at 13 years old was murdered. Now that changed the direction of his life. Could he have up and moved to a new neighborhood like a lot of people suggested in the comments? Like, no, that's not possible. Once you're labeled a certain neighborhood, it's more dangerous to leave, okay? So he was given arms by the local gang and saying, your job is now to protect the senior citizens that don't have anywhere to go. And if you don't, their house is going to be burned down, which is all they own. There's a good chance they'll die from local gangs.
Right.
So he doesn't look at himself as a gang member. I do, because I'm an outsider coming in. He looks at himself as an appointed soldier here to protect.
Right.
Now, some people that watch my videos will get that. Some people won't. There was a time I only met him for 2 days. I spent 2 days with him. I had a bag with a drone and some extra batteries in it, but nobody knew what I had in my backpack. They just saw me with a backpack. There's a time where we split up because there was a gunfight while I was there, and he told me to go hide. And when I was hiding, one of his gang members came up and started wanting to go in my bag. Now, he stopped what he was doing to come over and protect me like a brother, somebody I just met. He was willing to die that moment for me against one of his own gang members.
Right.
He said, this is my guest, don't touch my guest, in his language. Now, when the video was released, he has died since. He was killed since. So I put out a tribute to him, and I said, rest in peace. From what I knew of him, he was a good person, put in circumstances that caused him to do what he did. But a lot of the comments are burn in hell. You could have been a doctor. You could have been in this, which I don't believe is true. I think your surroundings will dictate your future. And again, I look at that as if I was born in Haiti and my little brother was killed, I might be exactly the same.
And what you're saying is absolutely correct, because I remember when I came out of university, my first clientele were addicts, right? Both drug. So I worked in Baltimore, and it was meth, heroin, along those lines. I remember my first thought was these guys are delinquents. But after hearing their stories, I realized if I was in their situation, I'd probably do the same thing. And I'm saying that because you raise some valid points there, because again, many people choose, and it's sometimes psychologically safe for them just to think, you know what, I'm not even putting myself in anybody's position. I am here and they are there, and let me just keep them on that side. And because even if I start to think about their situation, it probably would shine a light even on their own inconsistencies, their own, for want of a better word, lack of empathy, to realize that, maybe they could be doing more. And again, I'm not saying it's anybody's responsibility to help others, because live your life how you want. But you yourself know sometimes you could be doing a little better even for your country.
Of course. So Really rich conversation, powerful conversation. There's so much more that we need to get into. We're talking about, is choice relative? We'll be back after this break.
Yes, welcome back to Manhood. My name is Chris Muslist. Today we're talking about, is choice relative?
Yeah. Right.
And, at the break, we always say that we share whatever we talk about off camera, on camera. And a couple of things that we want to, sort of get into, where we spoke about Trinidad, some of the experiences that both KG and Chris have had with regards to that, about why is the expectation of death so early in life, where it's between 20 and 25 years old. And coming back to really break it down granular when we say is choice, choice is relative. Because you might look at someone and say, well, they have a gold chain, so therefore they could afford to eat, or they could have chosen to do something different. But what about before that? What about at the stage where they're just hungry, where they're scared, they're humans at that point? And what about that point where there is no choice but to join a pack? And by joining that pack, there are certain things that have to be done in that pack to simply survive.
Before I come in, Chris, remember the last time I was on the show, we talked about my experience with my high school, and I spoke about me going to the school for the first time. I went to a school before, and it was a regular school, everything was nice. And I do come an entrance, and I went to this school. And the school, well, to me, it was horrible compared to what I was accustomed to. So I was accustomed to, if somebody do you something, you could go to the teacher and be like, miss, this boy hit me. He would get in trouble. This school now where I realized from the time I went to the principal office and say, sir, this man, that was the worst thing I could have do. And that was like a culture shock to me, because my mother was teaching me, if somebody do you something, go and tell. And where that school, it was snitching. That was the first time people used the word, he's a snitch. So telling was frowned upon. So I couldn't even tell. So what I had to do, I had to defend myself, because every time I tell, it making my situation worse and worse and worse. And
You surviving.
yeah, correct. And growing up, getting older and meeting friends in the streets, and it was like the exact same lifestyle. It's like if somebody take my chain or take anything of value from me, if I went to the police or I went to anything of that sort, it was just making it worse for me. And I would try to explain that to the elders around me, because like say I get in fights, they'd be like, why you fighting? I'd be like, because you hit me. And if I come and I tell and I say, you hit me, I's a baby, I's a imps, as they call it in Trinidad. So it kind of forced me to be this person where I had to just defend myself everywhere I go. Everywhere I go, I had to defend myself. It had no, go and make no police report, none of that. While the regular citizens of this country, they were able to do these things so easy, because they weren't around the environment I was around. They were around people that they agree, yes, go and tell the police if somebody do this to you. Go and tell your parents. Go on. I ain't grow up around that. I grew up around somebody do me something, I had to defend it. And me being on this defensive side for so many years, going through high school, all through my early 20s, having to be defensive, I had to be real. It turned me into a monster. It turned me into somebody where, before you even do me something, I don't looking at you as you are going to do me something. So I come in here to defend it. So if I go to the party, I not go in that party with me. I'm a one brethren. I go in that party to about 15 men. And people watching me like, KG, but why you come in the club with 10, 12, 15 men? Because I feeling like once I come out here, somebody is going to harm me. So I have to protect myself. And going through, and you just going through life thinking that this is okay, to the point where now you're moving around the place with firearms. You understand? Now you're moving like a gangster. Not knowing that I don't want to be a gangster. Men just don't want to die. Men just don't want to get the valuables taken from them. People just don't want to be hurt. Even if I go there with my girlfriend or go there with my little cousins, or I feel like I have a duty to protect them, because the things I see in society, all right, for instance, once I go out in public, I am thinking about the worst. I don't know about other people, but I am thinking about the worst, because I know what could happen. I have experiences of standing up on a corner, see a car pull up, Next 2 seconds, 2 men dead. These are things that I see, right? Without even being in crime or being a criminal, just playing the cards that I was dealt, growing up in the area that I grew up in, going to the school that I went to, choosing the friends that I probably chose at an early age. I had to experience some of the darkest things in my life, and that created a lot of anxiety, that created a lot of trauma, and through that, I could never be normal again. I have a chop on my hand with the camera. Which camera? This camera here. If you look at my hand, I have a big chop on my hand. That is from me going to a party and just standing up outside the party. Somebody see me, probably envy me for whatever reason. And now in an altercation, and I almost lost my life. You understand? So these are things that created so much trauma in my life to the point where, as I say, now I don't even feel normal. Now I'm a grown man. So obviously, I kind of try to break. Remember, I talked to you, I said I want to come to therapy, because...
It's still in come, eh? I'm waiting on you, right?
But these are things that I want to do because I know the trauma I have to deal with because of the life that I came from or because of the experiences I experienced, and I just want people to understand that a lot of us, a lot of the youths, a lot of the people that came from these lifestyles, they are dealing with serious mental issues. It's not just a man want to drive around the place with a gun because he like gun. He feeling like if he leave home, that gun is like when you leave home your cell phone. It's a must. It's something that will you think that you have to carry this firearm around because I will lose my life. And that alone is the worst feeling ever.
So when you said something really profound there about you just simply don't want to die.
You just don't want to die.
And if the criminal element are carrying around firearms because they also want to return to a home, whatever that home is. Mm-hmm. And by returning to that home, we place a judgment on that because we determine home to what we know home to be. Mm-hmm. But if their home is in a particular environment where it's called on, when you come back, you had to come back with a certain amount of things, or you'd have had to do something, right? Again, you're coming back to that fundamental, I need to eat, I want to live. But what happens is at some point, KG, at some point, Chris, at some point, Johan say, there is now you've gone from the basics of wanting to eat to now there is a choice. But is it by the time that you have that choice where you know really everybody has a moral compass? It doesn't matter who you are, you have a moral compass. And when you're now doing things for whatever reason, you enter somebody's home, you kill them, you kidnap them. These are innocent parties to any sort of gang association, say for example. At what point do you then say, is it that you've become so numb by that point and you've crossed over, or is it still that we're looking at it for your product of your environment?
Yeah,
I think he has been numbed it. Like me, for instance, I know Chris. Chris been going all over the place and seeing it, and I believe that the reason why he is so fearless too is because he saw it so much. It's like he understands the culture and understands exactly what it is. A lot of people don't understand what it is. So people would pass remarks like, Chris, you real brave boy. Why you going in these places? You ain't afraid to do you something? But Chris very well, he understands what is the culture of these people. These people not going to do Chris nothing. Once Chris go in these communities with respect and principle and love, these people are going to treat him the exact same way now. So I think I wouldn't say numb probably not the word, but you do develop a sense of understanding of what is this whole thing, even the back side of it where it comes to the corruption with the governments and all these things. You tend to understand what is going on. So when you watch people robbing or shooting or breaking into houses, the way how the regular person might look at it, we probably just might just see it.
Yes.
I just want to touch on that point that KG is bringing up there, where you accept the communities are accepting you. How are the communities then, Chris? Because we're looking at one side of the coin, and saying about where people grew up and their communities and whether they become numb, because that's what's impacting persons who have forums and persons of a certain class and ilk, etc., right? And persons who may say, yeah, but I'm minding my own business, I'm not harming anyone. But is it that those communities see it as, yeah, but because of that way of thinking and because we feel almost ostracized and we are looking for something more than a handout or pity, right? How their reaction is a particular way. So how are those communities
I'd
looking
love to
at it?
touch on two things. First, in regards to being numb. Normally with a career, let's use this podcast as an example. Season by season, your audience grows. You get more opportunity. The life of a gang member is the opposite. Doors close. Once you've committed your first robbery, or you've been seen with certain members of a group, doors are closing. You're now targeted. So you actually have less options opposed to more. Could you imagine being in a shootout? Like, now you're targeted for the rest of your life, no matter what you like. So it's not like they can grow out of this. So are they numb to it? They have to be. Nobody can live in complete fear, right? Nobody will admit that. Yeah. Now, in regards to me as a stranger coming and getting the opportunity to go into these neighborhoods, I believe there is definitely a lot of mental health issues. People tell me stuff that they haven't told their closest friend. It's like they want to release this, and this is a form of being released. And I also truly believe that if enough people say the same thing is wrong, that there could be change. These gangsters want simple things like beat them, for example. The river that runs through the middle of their neighborhood, the smell of it is so, I don't know if anybody has smelt it. As you walk by, you feel like you're going to vomit. And to imagine there's homes and every single person walks through that area every day. So when somebody welcomes me to the neighborhood, they want to make sure that these type of things are featured with hopes that somebody's going to see this. The government's going to be so embarrassed that they're going to send somebody in to fix the problem, right? It's not all about gloating. There's definitely an aspect of propaganda. For those that want to show guns, they're showing strength. They're trying to. Yeah. It's like a boxing match. If you watch a boxing match before the fight, even if they're friends, they got to hype it up. They got to create fear to sell the match to get you excited about it, right? I feel that I sort of touched upon it when I spoke to somebody else. A lot of these people, in comparison with Haiti or other places, they're very young and they're still innocent. They're still innocent in the sense when the camera's not on, they talk to me, sir, is everything okay, sir? Would you like water? The same ones that are toting guns. I don't feel like they're so far gone that they can't change. But because of the predicament that they're in, they really don't have the option. It's not like they can go get a job somewhere. If they get a job at the hospital,
levels have already gone.
They'll be killed. The word will get around that they work there. They're very limited to their choices.
So when we say choice, that choice, as you said, is like, do I get killed? Yes. Or do I stay alive? Yeah. And as you said, you simply don't want to die.
You don't want to die.
You also had a good perspective on Trinidad.
Yes. What I've seen is most of the biggest artists I've interviewed on my channel as well. I'm obviously not going to name names, but they're really kind-hearted people. There's bigger people in the community that are, I can't say forcing them to say certain lyrics, but every community wants to be the baddest. Like, that's the truth. That's the hype around the whole music. So a lot of these people have given a pen and paper and just asked on their own to write lyrics. They're not writing the type of lyrics that they are. But when put in, I don't know if you ever watch like Mexican wrestling, they put this mask on and then there's somebody completely different. They can go crazy in the ring and act a different way, right? That's part of this Trinidad. It's, yes, there are things that they see in their day-to-day life that they're singing about, but there are a lot of very exaggerated type things, especially when you see it in the beginning of any Trinidad song, which you'll see it's like all the weaponry in this video are toys or not real. Like they feel like they're in a movie. They're going to over-exaggerate. Like, give me some fake guns. And you're going to see me doing poses that I never would normally do in regular life. So with the Trinidad music, I've seen both sides. I've seen guys that sing it and they live it, but the majority of them, they're very soft-spoken. Yes, sir. No, sir. They don't want to die. But they're so far in now. There's no turning back. Once you're a visible person representing a certain neighborhood, there's no turning back. That's it. You've made your choice.
Johan, say, I know you have a point that you wanted to make just now, but if you could add to it by, people, the psychology behind, no matter who that person is, you put a guy in a suit, their shoulders
feel
come
better.
back, they feel better. They say you dress for the job that you want.
Yeah.
So putting a gun of a certain level, everyone's watching the video games, etc., and you put that in their hands,
Strong.
you feel a certain strength.
Yeah. All right. So I'll go first with KG. Those who may not be familiar, there's a framework called Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Where it says before you reach any type of self-actualization, you have to have your basic needs covered, which is food, shelter, love or belonging. And I remember looking at your videos, because I think I looked at almost all now. The common theme was a lot of the guys were missing some of the basic needs. And that sense of belonging, because when I was listening to these guys, I was actually thinking, these guys need love, right? I was thinking, if you just hold some of these guys and give them a hug, right? And as we saying it, this is manhood and this is men. Sometimes we look at hugs and things as soft. But if you just hold some of these guys and give them a hug, I'm sure it will bring them to tears.
But there are communities in Africa that do that. When they astray, so to speak, when they come back, instead of reprimanding them, the community comes together and embraces them.
But you know what? When I was in a certain neighborhood, we were going uphill. And rather than walk, everybody jumped in the back of a pickup truck. And I was in a car behind the pickup truck. Now, as they were going up the hill, all of the men held each other in an embrace. And I noticed it, but the driver of my car was in the gang. He said, look, we're not a gang, we're a family. We love each other. They were holding each other in a manner that in my side of the world, men would not hold each other that way.
Right.
They'd be accused of doing something different. But that love that they do want, because it's so difficult to get, I find that being a participant in what some would call a family, some would call a movement, others call a gang. It's easy to get enticed into that lifestyle when you don't have that love at home. And again, I've never been in a gang, but through talking to thousands of gang members, love is something I think is so important. Yes. Even the ability to communicate and simple things like touch and regular conversation is something that they yearn for, no different than anybody that's in this room or anybody watching this.
They're humans.
That's the truth. Because, Chris, I was thinking, why are these guys being so open and honest with Chris? Yeah. And I looked at people's comments. Some people say it's because of your race, right? People talk about colonialism, and they say all kind of things. And I was like, okay, maybe that could be a point of view. But I think as Trinidad and Tobagonians, we love our culture, We're proud of it. Even they want to say the Trinidad side of it, because all of us have something rich that we want to share. So meeting someone who is like starting from a blank slate, right? This guy don't know us, right? He don't have the stereotype or the stigma. So let me start speaking to him, and I'm sure, of course, as you started the videos, it started getting popular. So people see, this guy, he went in St. James. I remember he went in St. James, he eat some doubles, etc., etc. This guy actually want to listen to us, but everybody else may not want to. So let me bare my heart. And I was listening to even some of the little boys, and it just seemed that love. And is that love coming from? Because Robert, you said you don't think anybody is born inherently bad or evil, and I agree with that, because we just want to belong. We just want love. We just want a place to live that is safe, and we just want food. I know we have to go to the break, right? So this is Manhood, and we're speaking about Is Choice Relative. We have Robert, we have Chris, and we have KG, and my name is Johanse, and we'll be right back.
Welcome back to Manhood, and the topic that we are on is choice is relative. We are talking off camera basically about what they want. As you say, no millionaire just gonna come and just drop half of the millions on all your whatever the scene is. From my experience, these youths and these people, they basically just want a little bit of love, a little bit of opportunity. I went to a radio station, I think it was last week, and one of the things I was speaking about was, from my observation in this country as a youth growing up, I realized that once you look a certain way, we treat you a certain way. And that is how it always been. And one thing that I noticed when I started to go into these inner cities and help them out is that they were so appreciative that someone was literally taking them serious. So for instance, in my field of work, let's just say music, once you look a certain way, back in them days, the industry in Trinidad and Tobago, them in helping you. You know, if it wasn't from the west side, or it wasn't from the uptown, or it wasn't rubbing shoulders with certain people in the industry, they're not taking you serious. They don't want you in the studio, they don't want you in the radio station, they don't want you on the TV show. It was only a certain type of person you were seeing. I mean, they will have the one or two that will break the barriers, but the majority was from a certain class of people, at least from my observation, right? And with the Trinidad industry, it was almost like for the first time in years, because obviously it's not the first time we see Get to Youth get a chance. You know, with the Reggae All-Stars, it was the same type of thing, you know, the Get to Youth get a chance. But the Reggae All-Stars was a short stint, and then it stopped. And then it went back down the soca alley, where it was just who you know and who know you. And the Trinidad industry kind of was like the first time in years that you see the Get to Youth, the boy that never had the father to tell him, pull up your pants, son, so your pants still under, he gain a chance. You know, the youth that didn't have the mother to say, you finish your homework, he gain a chance, you know, and so on and so on and so on. And I just think that is all these people really want. Like Chris, for instance, when Chris come in there with his little camera, them happy because they know they're going to get to go on YouTube and see themselves with thousands of views. So basically all they want is to be seen and all they want is to be heard. A lot of these youths will come to places around certain people and you realize they will stand to the back. They will stay to the back and you want to know why them always just in the back, because when they come to the front, they don't feel appreciated. They don't feel like the camera want to look at them. It want to look at the others. We need to break out of that, you know. We need to continue to help and each one teach one and just spread that love in these communities. Like, I'm a cameraman, I'm a producer, so I will go into these communities and lend my work. Chris is a journalist, so he will go into these communities and lend his work. You don't say me you could go into these communities, council. You say me you have a platform, you could go into these communities. So anything that we could do, we should go into these communities more. We should have that mindset a little more now. Instead of trying to par with the ones who already make it, let me par with the ones that need help. You know, and I believe that is the only,
But there are some rules. We know this, right? Not everyone is welcome in the neighborhood. Could become dangerous for them as well. I'll jump in if you're complete. By no means am I an expert, no degree or anything along that lines in helping people, but what I can tell you is what I have seen to work before in Jamaica. I think the first step in gaining the ability to have some sort of relationship with these families or gang members is the government has to go in and listen to their problems. They have, every community has problems. Belmont, for example, two of the gentlemen here from Belmont, the stairs are long and old, and there's elderly going up every day, and there's big cracks. It's very dangerous. Mm-hmm. Would not take much for the government to go in and make that first priority, get it done this week. Show a sign that, hey, I'm going to listen to your problems, especially when they're very minute problems that could be fixed in a day or two and last the next 30 years, right? Using BTUM, for example, not unlike any human on planet Earth, they deserve an area to live in that's free from bacteria, and the liquids that are flowing in there just is not humane. And as I was there, the dogs were licking it. Then the dogs will go urinate on the like it's just contaminating the whole neighborhood. I think the first step in building a relationship, and some people might think I'm crazy, but I truly believe there should be conversation between police, government, and members of the community, even if they are gang members. There has to be some kind of communication. And I think once that relationship is built to a certain extent, the second step, which I found to work very well in Jamaica, anybody who knows the artist Sizzla, he lives in a place called Augusttown. Mm-hmm. Now, Augusttown was ranked as one of the most murderous neighborhoods year after year after year. So even when I went there about 6 months ago, people said, don't go there. But when I got there, what I've never seen before and done impeccably, if that's the word, yeah, you know what I'm trying to say. It's a word. What they had people wearing vibrant color vests, all elders from the community, all volunteers. Nobody gets a penny. But every single day they have 12 people in the community doing their chores with this vest on. These are, some of them might be previous gang members, some of them might be just the little old lady that she cooks stuff for the community. Now, they're the mediators in the community. A lot of people don't feel safe going to police. I don't blame them, right? They could put themselves in danger. But they do feel safe going to these community leaders that are elders, right? And the murder rate in Augusttown, when I was there 6 months ago, they went 365 days without a major crime. So they went from like worst of the worst to this. So this is like a perfect case study that it can work. Now, if you just went into the regular community now with 12 people wearing vests, it would not be welcomed. Let's give back to some of these communities the very basic needs, as you talked about in the beginning, you know, food, shelter, love. Those are probably the three most basic, but hey, let's fix some very simple problems to show we're willing to work with you. And I think the next step, again, is putting in a group of people that maybe they sit down once a month with somebody like yourself and say, like, learn how to listen, learn how to give proper advice, because how it's used in the community is like, I don't like this guy, right? I want to harm him. He's done something. I think he stole something from my car. Let me go talk to an elder and at least give you a cool down moment to decide, you know, is there a different way? Maybe the elder will go speak. So there's a mediator, right? And can you imagine if that was implemented in the communities that are willing to implement it? Because like we said, we're not going to solve this current problem overnight. But if this becomes regular, that if I have a problem, I have nobody to talk to and I don't want to talk to a priest, let me talk to an elder. Let me talk to somebody that might have done what I'm doing now and lived through it. So those are my two take-homes. And again, those are not my ideas. Those are things that I've seen that have been implemented in different countries that were very, very murderous, and it's worked.
So it comes down to, Chris, you know, when people say, like, you know, two things. One, if you treat someone like an animal, if you see them like an animal, then you can't expect them to behave any differently.
For sure.
And so a lot of it has to start with how do we view persons? How are we being viewed? Because in the same way, you know, in a lot of the let's put it, the mountain people living in the mountains, the communities, right, are looking at these communities with disdain, with disgust, because again, it's coming back to survivability. I just don't want you to come into my environment and upset the apple cart, right? And therefore, I'm not interested in what you've done in your documentary is now expose. You know, people now have to bring up that looking glass and see what is happening in the country. And you can't hide behind the carnival and the parties and the nice lives and all the rest of it. You now have to see what other persons who you're driving by on a regular basis up and down the highways in these communities, hearing about the crimes, see what they're going through, see what they're experiencing, and therefore understand why, as a product of that, these other things are happening. And we're not saying that all of them are as a result of poverty and not having food in the fridge. Some of them are really a choice that you've gone to now where you want to now live a certain life without doing the necessary to live that life. You understand? Because there are persons that decide, okay, when they're given that moment, that they can make an honest living. They might never get the Benz. They might never get the nice house. But they're choosing at that point to live an honest life. But that's not the case for the majority, and that's being exposed by documentaries that you're doing.
I do have one third point that I think I should add, because the first two, I want to be very clear. These people wearing yellow vests, if I see them shoplifting, I'm not interfering. I'm not a police officer, and I don't pretend to be a police officer. I'm there for mediation. And I think, lastly, there definitely has to be a relationship between police, a respect for police in the communities. And I think the very first step in every single community, I said the same thing, the police need to be using working cameras. If they clock in, from the moment they clock in until the moment they clock out, there has to be. This is what every community. Imagine gangsters are telling me that why are they not wearing their cameras if they have nothing to hide, you know? And I talked to Alexander, and I asked him the same question, and he said, like, the way it is, they do have to wear it, right? But he said, imagine you're in a shootout, you're really going to remember to turn on the camera, right? And that's true. If you're in a shootout, I can't imagine. But in the USA, the battery length is long enough for one shift, the camera's on. is documented, and then there's evidence for every side. The police have to be respected in the communities.
So you mentioned a point there that I also want Johansi to touch on. I still want you to come back to the point of why people feel different when they be different or they dress differently, etc. But to what you said, Chris, what you're then giving them by an elder being in the community is something that we said you might not have at the start, which is to make a choice. Because your choice at that point is simply almost Neanderthal. It's I need to eat.
Yes.
And you either eat or this happens, right? Or I don't want to die. But by going to an elder now, when you have satisfied maybe having food, maybe having shelter, maybe having some love in your life, community, as you suggested, that they are family, once you've reached that point and you now want to make a choice as into, do I now want to rob and kill or kidnap and all these other things to get a higher standard of living, right? Now I can go to an elder and make a choice to say what else is there for me? What other options are there for me to navigate this life that has been dealt to me?
What I would say, one is, hearing this discussion, even being part of it, actually have me feeling a bit emotional, because since I'm a child, and I say I grew up in Belmont, even the same steps that I run up and down those steps as a child, right? Because my mom used to work right in the school below. These solutions seem so simple, right? It seems so simple, and simple yet it have moving parts, but it's simple. And we depending on the government, I would say, for me, it always has been a problem for me, because yes, we understand what a government's supposed to do, right? And there's no matter party now, because I mean, I live long enough, my hair have enough grey hair, I live long enough in Trinidad to know governments come, governments go, and it's the same And if we can't depend on the government, then we have to depend on ourselves.
Correct.
And with what little resources we have, we could build upon and build upon and build upon, because the truth is that have 1.5 million people in the country, the government is a few people, right? They are in the minority. And it also gives us empowerment, because listening to their videos, a lot of times you're hearing people like the government this and the government that. And I agree, you should put pressure on the government, because we paying them. Right? But if they're not doing it, then we have to do it ourselves with what little we have. And then I would also add, this may seem a bit utopian or cliched, but we cannot escape from the fact that we are all one, right? No matter how much money you have or you don't have, that we are all one. And if we keep
all Trinidad and Tobago,
if we keep trying to be separate, right, everything will break down, the beautiful place of Trinidad and Tobago and any of the other countries you go to. Because if you look at Haiti itself is a beautiful place, right? These places you go to is we are all one. And looking at it that way, we have to do something, right? And I'm glad that, Chris, you're highlighting what you highlighted, because again, knowledge is power. KG, I'm glad you're also being open and candid, because even when you're saying your story, I could hear the emotion in your voice.
Yeah, really.
Which means it's human.
And I still feel that way today. Like I telling somebody, I want to cut you again, but
now you
I was
go
telling somebody
As
just about 2-3 days ago, I was like, you ever hear people saying that innocent people in prison? Like you always hearing that innocent people in prison, not everybody in jail bad. I just feel like an innocent man in prison in the free will. Because I live in a society where they always want to chastise something I do. Or my chain, or all you know me, I a good youth. Understand?
Let me tell
no,
you.
I mean, I a good youth, but
I went to his neighborhood and I walked through. And, when I was walking with you and a few other people, like in my neighborhood, we would talk about like, I remember we used to play like basketball here.
Yeah.
It was every 10 steps, all 3 of my friends got murdered here. Or there were 6 guys standing here and 4 of them died, and here are their names. This is not normal. You cannot expect somebody to walk in the same footsteps that their friends have been murdered, and for them just to be okay. You can put on a front. Some people can put the front on. And people, again, I read the comments of every one of my videos, every comment, and it's sad to me that people don't realize that everybody does have a different choice. He didn't have a choice. And he's not far gone. Like, there are people that are 1 million times worse than KG, but everybody needs help. The country of Trinidad needs help. There has to be a first step.
So, Chris, we come to that point that we have to wrap up. We
Yes.
have to wrap up. And again, another powerful conversation, and one that I'm sure our viewers, listeners, etc., we would love to hear a lot more. And you know, because it's a conversation that needs to be had, and it's impacting everyone in Trinidad and Tobago, not just the persons who are perpetuating the crime that's visible, but also the persons who are doing it. Everyone is being affected.
Yeah.
You know, they're doing it for a reason. You know, and the persons being impacted are only looking at that because they're being impacted by something in terms of something negative onto them. But what is the bigger picture of what they're either turning a blind eye to or not doing themselves? So as you mentioned about, you know, this it's the government. The government are elected to manage resources, right? And whether the government's doing it or not, citizens still have the power to still make changes.
Correct.
So the stairs need fixing. People see this. Someone in corporate Trinidad and Tobago could go and fix the stairs. The community could, you know, rally somebody around events. And again, we might say it sounds simple, but sometimes it is. Sometimes it really is
really
just
is
that
that
simple.
simple.
Yeah.
You know, and it's because we put the complexity behind it and think that we'll know it, that sounds a bit too easy. You know, it's why there's always these levels and red tape and all these things that can go off. But Chris, I want you to close really just sort of letting Trinidad and Tobago know. I know you return to let us know what are your thoughts on Trinidad and Tobago. Sort of summarize it and your hope for us. Your
Yeah.
hope for us.
Yeah, for sure. You know, Trinidad and Tobago's a country like I've never experienced before. Right from the moment I got here, nobody knew who I was, or very few people knew who I was. You know, from walking down the street from my Airbnb to getting my first double, 4 or 5 people talking to me. What I'll remember most about the country is the people. And whenever the people are the number one point of a country, I think it's a good reason to promote the country. I know despite the kind of content that I film, a certain percentage of people think I have this agenda to make Trinidad and Tobago look bad. It's so far from the truth. You know, through doing this, I realize that highlighting an issue often comes with a resolution to the issue. I'll continue to come back over and over again as long as Trinidad and Tobago will welcome me. That's another topic. You know, not everyone likes their errors to be highlighted on film. Governments don't like that. Police don't like that. Although every police officer I've met has shaken my hand and said, thank you for showing the world how difficult of a job that we have. I didn't come with an agenda. I've mentioned this before. If a volcano had erupted in Trinidad and 1,000 houses were destroyed, that would have been my topic for journalism. I didn't come here to shoot gangs. When I came here and I read the news and I saw what was going on, it was my duty to cover the issues. But I have nothing but love for Trinidad and the people of Trinidad. I can put it this way. I think that 95, if not more, % of the gang members I met that might look harsh on video, if given the option to choose a different life, they would absolutely change. It's only the biggest and the baddest, we'll call them the leaders, that are so content because with the money they're making, why would they want to change? But on the other hand, 95% of these guys are good people that they don't have many options. Again, it's relative. So because that number is so high, I have high hopes that Trinidad can turn things around. My recommendations, once again, are proven. They're not my ideas. I would love for them to take the first step and start fixing some of these very minute things like stairs and the river and Beetham. And the one thing I can take home is when I went down south into Marabella with King Rilla, he is the only community that I went to that did not complain about the government. And when I had asked him, what are your thoughts on the government? He said, no, they give us contracts in the community all the time. See these trees? This is government funded. And it was like 12 trees or 15 trees. They gave very little in order to build a relationship. Further evidence that, you got to build a relationship. It's not fighting. You're not fighting with the community. Build a relationship. Go talk to a leader, talk to elders, say, what are the 5 things that are prioritized in order that you need fixed? Let's start fixing them slowly. And I think then the relationships will be built and you'll start seeing more peace in the community. treat, as you said, treat the humans as they're humans, not animals, and things will change.
Absolutely. KG?
Well, before we leave, I know Chris will be going back in a few days, or probably today or tomorrow, anything. But I just want to say thanks to Chris for really coming and highlighting something that I've been trying to highlight to a certain extent. Same way too, I just try to get people to just understand what is really going on in these communities. The reason why I start my podcast is the same reason Chris doing this. I just want to give people a platform, and I just want people to really see the reality of what is going on in this country.
Let people know the podcast.
Yeah, it does break my heart to like just hear conversations, naive conversations.
What's the name of your podcast?
You know, Talks with KG.
Right.
It just break my heart because I know the kind of things that we've been going through. I know the things that I went through. I know the things that my friends still going through. And I just want to see people understand it so they could probably help a little more. You know? Yeah, man.
Perfect. And Chris and KG, thank you very much for highlighting the truth.
Yeah.
We often say, is the harsh truth or the harsh reality? But what is really harsh is a lie.
Yeah.
The truth is the truth. And we know what we need to do. And I'll just add something. Accountability is important. In Trinidad and Tobago, and again, I live here long enough, accountability is something that's lacking. Even something you're saying about the body cameras. Not putting it on is lack of accountability. And I'm not even saying I'm perfect either. I think lack of accountability could be a cultural thing. So now that we highlight it, right, and we might feel bad about it, might feel a little embarrassed, cool. That's good. So now we could do better in being accountable so that we could actually give the citizens and give each other more options of a choice.
Huge. I think that's one of the biggest words that I did not use today. You know, when I was in Haiti before this current war, they lacked accountability. You know, the comments, all of the comments were like, why are you showing this? We have beautiful beaches. We have tropical trees, and the butterflies are like nowhere else in the world. They don't want to be accountable for the problems in Haiti, and look how it's gone.
Right.
You need to highlight the problems. People have to digest the fact that there are communities. You know, every day I'm looking on Instagram, there's 3 murders, 4 murders, and sometimes there's a photo, most of the time it's just a name. Somebody might take a glance and they put their phone down, they forgot. But let's look at the face, let's look at the crying mother, let's understand that this is a reality today. I didn't bring the crime to Trinidad. Some people think I did. Oh, Chris, since you came, crime went up. Like, this is how far-fetched reality is for some people. They don't want to know. Accountability is huge.
Right.
So, as we know, and Chris, you might know, I normally have, never really lost for words. But this conversation has me more pensive than others, and for good reason. We spoke about the topic being choice is relative, and we spoke about the varying degrees of choice and what is granular and not. But so choice mightn't always be relative, but your situation within that you have that choice also is not always ideal, right? But there's that saying, evil will prevail when good people do nothing. And Johan say, as you do, and I love you as a brother for that. You took the word, because I was gonna lead off with accountability, and Chris, I'm glad that you embellished on that, because the truth is, we don't like to hold up that looking glass. We don't like to introspect. It's a blame game. We love to attack. And always put it off on someone else, and not look inside and say, what can I do better? Where am I falling? And part of that is looking at these communities, and we're not talking about the criminal element again. Criminal and criminality is
a part of poverty.
Is a part of poverty, but not even just poverty. A part of humans. Humans commit, regardless. You don't have a systematic. Some of the top criminals are not poor, right? So it is not down to I'm talking about the communities, and the communities, and as you said, Chris, 95%. We're Trinbagonians. We're not inherently like that. We are loving. Cool people. We see it at Carnival. We see it when you told me behind the camera. They're looking at bringing you drinks and water and things like that. That's who we are.
I've seen grown men cry. To me,
grown men cry.
Right.
We just need to see ourselves like that again, and we don't need that within Trinidad and Tobago that for some reason communities are now being ostracized, and you're being like, oh, are you from there? So you're this.
Yes.
And you're from there, and you're this. And as a result of that, people then tend to behave because you already seen me like that. So I'm going to behave in accordance with that. And that needs to change. And that looking glass and that introspection, that accountability comes from every one of 1.5 million people in Trinidad and Tobago. And choice, is choice relative? Yes, it is. We still have a choice. Some people have more of a choice than others to do certain things. So guys, really powerful. Thank you for being here. Johanse, Chris, safe journey back.
Thank you.
You know, KG, always a pleasure.
Yeah, man.
This has been Manhood.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Manhood, brought to you in part by Reboot Sports Drink.